The cop didn't write me a ticket. She asked me out. You ever have one of those moments where everything stops? Not just time, but thought, breath, logic, and suddenly the world feels too quiet, too surreal to be real. That was me, sitting in my truck on the side of a desert road, watching a uniformed cop slide a folded piece of paper across my window frame. No ticket, no warning, just 7 handwritten digits and a look I'll never forget. Technically, I should write you a ticket, she said, her tone cool, even. And then came the line that flipped my entire day, maybe my whole life. But I'd rather write down my number. I thought I misheard her. Honest. The sun was low, my music had just been thumping minutes earlier, and now I was staring into the mirrored sunglasses of a woman who looked like she could run a traffic stop and a courtroom without blinking. It didn't feel real. My name's Jace Whitaker. I'm 23, a full-time mechanic just outside Flagstaff, Arizona. I work at my uncle's shop, been doing it since I was a teenager. Grease under my nails, calluses on my hands, no degree, no big plans. Just engines and oil and long hours in the sun. That Friday afternoon started like every other clock-out roll down the windows, crank the music, and head home through winding roads that cut between wide skies and red rock. No traffic, no hurry. But I guess I let the breeze do the driving, because the next thing I knew, those red and blue lights were lighting up my rearview mirror like Christmas. And then, her. Officer Maddox. She didn't smile, didn't flirt. She just handled it like a pro, asked for my license and registration like I was any other idiot with a heavy foot. But when she came back, no citation. Just that folded note. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't even call her. Not for 2 days. I sat on it, drove around with it in my glove box like it was some kind of live wire. Because what was I supposed to think that a cop, a woman in uniform, older, sharp, beautiful, intimidating, was actually serious? But that's the thing about life. It never hits you where you expect. Sometimes it swerves, sometimes it wears a badge, and sometimes it hands you a number that changes everything. That folded note sat in my glove box for 2 full days. Every time I got into my truck, it was the first thing I saw, tucked neatly next to my registration, like it had always belonged there. I'd glance at it, my hand almost reaching, then pull back. Not today. Not yet. My mind spun with all the what-ifs. What if she wasn't serious? What if it was a joke? What if I misread the whole thing and she was just being polite in some weird, dry cop humor kind of way? But deep down, I knew it wasn't a joke. I remembered the way she said it. Calm, intentional, like she didn't flinch at her own boldness. Sunday night I cracked. I was sitting on my porch with a cold beer in one hand and that piece of paper in the other, staring at it like it might burst into flames if I looked away. My cousin Nate was inside watching the game. I told him what happened, half expecting him to call me crazy. He laughed so hard he nearly choked on his drink. A cop gave you her number. On a traffic stop, he said, raising his eyebrows, like I'd just told him I saw Bigfoot changing a tire on the freeway. Dead serious. He squinted. And you haven't called bro. She's probably telling her friends right now, can you believe that kid didn't call me? You better fix that. That was the nudge I needed. I walked out to my truck, shut the door behind me, and sat there in silence. I typed the number into my phone. My fingers hovered over the call button. I've rebuilt carburetors with my eyes closed, but I'd never been this nervous dialing a phone number. 1 ring, 2, then a voice. Hello, it was her. Calm, crisp, confident. The same voice from that day on the road. I swallowed. Hey, this is Jace. Jace Whitaker. You pulled me over on Friday. Pause. Then a smile slipped through the phone. I know who this is. I let out a nervous laugh. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to call. I thought maybe you were messing with me. If I were messing with you, she said smoothly, I would have given you the ticket and my number. Touché. We talked. Not long, just enough. She told me her name was Karen Maddox, 35. No kids, no husband. On the force for over a decade. Lived alone just outside town with a black lab named Murphy and a strong preference for black coffee over cream and sugar. Why me? I finally asked when the conversation quieted. She didn't miss a beat. You seem decent. Most guys I pull over argue or lie. You didn't. You were honest. And, I don't know. You felt real. That word hit me harder than I expected. Real. I didn't even know what that meant to someone like her, a woman who probably saw the worst in people every day and had to stay cool through it all. But I guess that's why it mattered. She wasn't looking for perfect. She just wanted someone who didn't wear a mask. Before we hung up, she said, "So, want to meet up, just coffee? No flashing lights." I smiled. Sure. Where she gave me the name of a diner on the edge of town. Quiet. Unremarkable. A place where people minded their own business and apparently where off-duty cops could have first dates without getting recognized. Tomorrow night. I'll be there. Cool, I said. Any dress code? Just wear the same shirt. Looked good on you. I spent 20 minutes ironing that shirt the next day. I didn't even know it could wrinkle. Nate caught me fixing my hair in the mirror and grinned. You're acting like it's prom night. Feels like it, I muttered. I showed up 5 minutes early. She was already there, sitting in a booth, sipping coffee, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket. Her hair was down soft waves around her shoulders. She didn't look like a cop. She looked effortless. She stood up when she saw me. Took you long enough. I had to build up the courage. Well, she said, sliding into the booth again, you're here now. The conversation flowed easy. No awkward pauses, no small talk for the sake of filling space. She asked questions like she actually wanted to know the answers. I told her about the shop, about how I'd been working with my uncle since high school, how I almost skipped graduation once to finish rebuilding a Camaro. She told me about the academy, about being the only woman in her class, about how she broke her nose during a drill and didn't tell anyone until the shift was over. She was sharp, fierce, but not cold. She laughed with her whole face, rolled her eyes when she made fun of herself. She had stories, real ones, the kind that reminded you this world doesn't owe anyone peace. You have to make it for yourself. When we walked out to the parking lot, I leaned against my truck. So, do I get a warning now? She smirked. No, but you get this. Then she kissed me. It wasn't dramatic, just firm. Sure. Soft at first, then longer. When she pulled back, she whispered, "Next time, don't wait so long to call." I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my truck looking at the empty passenger seat, remembering the way she looked at me like she wasn't second-guessing it, like she knew exactly what she wanted. We texted nonstop for the next week, nothing over the top, just consistent. A meme here, a hope you're not speeding there. Something was building quietly, but steadily. The next Saturday, she messaged, "Want to take me somewhere that doesn't smell like motor oil?" I replied. Name it. She picked a small coffee shop downtown, quiet and cozy, where the baristas didn't blink when she walked in. I got there early again. Couldn't help it. I was already halfway in before I realized I was nervous. And when she walked through the door, no badge, no belt, no uniform, something inside me settled. She sat down, smiled, and said, "You look less terrified this time." I feel less terrified. Good. We talked. Again. This time deeper. She told me about her dad, a cop too. Died in the line when she was 16. Said she joined the force because she thought she owed it to his legacy, but stayed because the work still felt unfinished. Said some nights she still wondered if it was all worth it. It is, she said, looking into her cup. When someone calls you a lifesaver, even once it sticks. And me, I just sat there, not trying to fix anything, just listening. And maybe that was enough. That second date coffee conversation, and that warm quiet that settled around us, was the moment I knew this wasn't going to be a one-off. It didn't feel like some fling with an expiration date. There was something steady under all the strange beginnings, something I hadn't felt before. We met up again the next weekend. She picked the spot. A local bar that did live jazz on Fridays and had lighting dim enough that she wouldn't get recognized by off-duty officers or nosy locals. When she walked in wearing a fitted black jacket and jeans, her hair loose, I just stared. Not because she looked perfect, she always did, but because I couldn't believe this woman kept choosing me. We drank, talked, didn't force anything. She asked about my childhood. I told her about growing up in a 2-bedroom trailer with a single mom who never took a day off, how the garage became my second home, how I fell in love with engines before I ever fell in love with a person. She laughed and said that made sense. I had the kind of calm that only comes from fixing what other people throw away. She didn't talk much about her exes. I didn't press. But I got the sense there were ghosts she hadn't quite laid to rest. Not bad people necessarily, just people who didn't know how to stay. And she wasn't the kind of woman you could half love. You had to be all in or get out of the way. Later that night, after the music wound down, we ended up sitting on the hood of her cruiser off-duty parked behind the bar. The stars were thick above us. "I haven't done this in a long time," she said, looking up. "What, data mechanic?" "No," she smiled. "Let myself like someone who doesn't come with a dozen red flags." I looked at her. "I've got a few. They're just tucked under the hood." She laughed, and I swear it was the best sound I'd heard in years. That was the night she kissed me again. Longer. Deeper. The kind of kiss that shifts something in your chest and doesn't give it back. After that, things picked up. We weren't official. We weren't labeling it. But we saw each other. Weekly. Then twice a week. Then whenever we could. Karen's shifts were brutal evenings, doubles, weekends. And when she got home, she was too wired to sleep or too exhausted to talk. But she always made time. And I always showed up. We started falling into each other's routines. She'd swing by the shop sometimes, bringing coffee and sarcasm. I'd cook dinner when she worked nights and leave it in Tupperware in her fridge. She hated dishes. I didn't mind them. I started keeping a toothbrush at her place. She didn't say anything about it, just cleared a spot on the shelf. One Friday night, she texted me, "Come over after work. Don't bring flowers. Bring fries." When I showed up, she was in sweats, no makeup, hair twisted up, badge and duty belt tossed on the kitchen table. She looked exhausted and more beautiful than ever. "You brought milkshakes too," she said with a grin. "You get me," I said. We ate on the couch watching some cop drama she swore was total garbage. By midnight, she was asleep with her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. I just watched her breathe and thought, this is it. This is the moment I know. I didn't say it that night, "I love you," but the words sat in my chest like a truth waiting its turn. A week later, she invited me to meet her sister Devin. "Just a heads up," she said in the car. "Devin's protective. She might interrogate you." "I've been pulled over by you," I said. "I'll survive." Devin lived in a ranch-style house on the north side of town. When we walked in, she was setting out lemonade. Same eyes as Karen, but more guarded. "So this is the mechanic," she said, half smiling. I nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She shook my hand. "How old are you again, 23? A pause. Then, "And you're dating my sister." "Yes, ma'am." Karen rolled her eyes. Seriously." Devin didn't press further, but she watched the way I looked at Karen, the way I listened to her stories, the way she laughed when I teased her. And before we left, she pulled me aside in the kitchen. "She's been through hell," she said. "You break her, and I'll make sure you regret it." I didn't flinch. "I won't," I said. And I meant it. A few weeks after that, I signed the lease on a small 2-bay garage across town. My own place. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I drained most of my savings to make it happen. Karen came by that night, saw the key in my hand, and pulled me into the biggest hug. "You did it," she said. "I'm proud of you. You don't think it's crazy?" "No. You've never looked more certain." We celebrated with greasy burgers on the hood of her cruiser again. That night, I asked if she wanted to take a quick road trip before the shop opened. She said yes. We drove up into the mountains. No phones, no distractions, just winding roads, cool air, and windows down. We stopped at a scenic overlook and stood there watching the sun paint the valley gold. I reached into my backpack, heart pounding, pulled out a small black box I'd been carrying around for days. "Karen." She turned. "I wasn't planning to do this here, or today, But ever since you pulled me over, nothing's felt random. You didn't just stop me, you rerouted my whole life." I opened the box. Simple ring, no flash, just meaning. "I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you were right to take that chance. Will you marry me?" She blinked. Once. Twice. "You're insane," she said. Then she kissed me. When she pulled back, she whispered, "Yes." And just like that, everything that started with flashing lights and folded paper had become something permanent. We didn't rush the wedding. We didn't care about floral arrangements or matching napkins. We just wanted something small, something honest. Karen's sister Devin offered her backyard, and that was all we needed. 8 months later, we stood under paper lanterns and string lights barefoot in the grass, surrounded by 24 people who mattered. My uncle wore a tie for the first time in 15 years. Devin cried through the entire ceremony despite swearing she wouldn't. Nate played acoustic guitar while the kids ran around with sparklers. Karen wore a simple white dress, her badge tucked into her bouquet like a quiet nod to the life that led her here. "For luck," she said. "We didn't write elaborate vows, just truth." Karen's ended with, "You weren't even supposed to be in my lane that day. But I'm glad you were." Mine, I didn't try to be poetic. I just said the only thing that mattered, I didn't know what I was looking for until you stood in my window holding a citation you never gave me. No one clapped. No one cheered. They just smiled like everyone knew they'd watched something real happen. We didn't take a honeymoon. Karen was still on active duty, and I was knee-deep in the chaos of opening the shop. But we didn't care. We didn't need a getaway. We already had a life worth coming home to. The garage took off faster than I expected. People liked that I was young hungry and didn't talk down to them. Word spread. Within 6 months, I hired 2 more mechanics and started running the place 7 days a week. I was exhausted and filthy most of the time, but proud. I'd built something from nothing. At home, we found a rhythm. Karen worked nights more often than not, which meant our mornings became our evenings. She'd come home at 6 a.m., hair up, face tired, but smiling when she saw me in the kitchen. I'd pour her coffee, make eggs, and listen as she decompressed. Sometimes she'd talk about a chase or an arrest or some dumbass who wouldn't step out of his car. Sometimes she'd say nothing at all. Just sit, sip her coffee, and lean against my shoulder while the sun rose. That became our version of peace. One morning, maybe a year in, she looked at me over her mug and said, "I think I'm late." For work, I asked, half asleep. "No," she said. "Really late." We didn't panic. But after 3 tests and a very still moment on the bathroom floor, she laughed. "I'm 36, she said. "I didn't think I'd get here. You mean pregnant, with someone I actually want to raise a kid with." I sat next to her, rested my hand gently on her stomach. "We'll be good parents." She looked at me, unsure, overwhelmed, maybe a little scared, but nodded. "I think so too." Pregnancy changed things, not in a bad way, just in a real way. Karen worked until month 5, then took leave. I scaled back my hours. Devin brought over food. Nate assembled a crib I never would have trusted him to build. Even Murphy, Karen's ancient black lab, got gentler, like he knew something was about to change. The night Eli was born, it was raining, not hard, just steady like a soundtrack. We had gone in for a routine checkup. The doctor checked her chart, glanced up and said, "You're not going home tonight." Karen didn't flinch. I, on the other hand, went full panic mode, pacing, texting, trying to fill out insurance forms with shaking hands. She just looked at me, smiled, and said, "Breathe." 6 hours later, at 3:14 a.m., Eli Maddox Whitaker came into the world. 6 pounds, a full head of hair, and lungs that let the whole hospital know he'd arrived. They handed him to Karen first. She stared at him for a full minute without saying a word, just tears rolling silently down her cheeks. When they handed him to me, I nearly dropped him, not because I wasn't ready, but because in that moment I knew life had shifted forever. That was the best night of my life. We brought him home 2 days later. Murphy sniffed his toes and immediately accepted him into the pack. I rebuilt the crib myself. Karen said it leaned slightly to the left. I said it added character. She rolled her eyes. "You're going to be that dad, aren't you?" Life slowed down after that in the best way. We didn't go out much, didn't care. We stayed in learning how to live inside the same walls with no sleep formula stains and diaper blowouts at 2:00 a.m. We took turns with midnight feedings. We learned how to argue quietly and how to nap in shifts. And somehow, in all the chaos, we laughed more than we ever had. We didn't lose each other. We just grew around each other. One night, maybe 6 months in, we were sitting on the porch again. Same 2 chairs, same coffee mugs. The baby monitor crackled softly between us. Karen leaned back, hoodie zipped up to her chin. "You ever think about that day?" she asked. "What day?" "The day I pulled you over." I smiled. "All the time." "I wasn't supposed to be on that road," she said. "Dispatch rerouted me. Another officer called in sick last minute. I was filling in." I turned to her. "You never told me that. I didn't think much of it back then. But now—" She looked at the monitor, then back at me. "I don't believe in fate or destiny or whatever, but sometimes I wonder." She trailed off. I reached over, took her hand. "Best detour of my life." She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. And that was it. No big twist, no tragic ending, no explosion, just a woman who should have given me a ticket, but gave me her number instead. And me, a mechanic with grease under his fingernails who didn't just fall in love with the woman in uniform. He built a life with her. It's been 3 years since that folded piece of paper changed everything. Karen still keeps her badge in the drawer by the front door. She's not on patrol anymore. After Eli was born, she transferred to desk duty. Said she didn't want to miss out on bedtime stories just to chase people who wouldn't stop at red lights. And me. The garage is thriving. We've got 4 bays now, 2 full-time mechanics. Regular customers who bring cookies and call me kid even though I've got oil in my blood and a baby at home. Our mornings still start early. Coffee. Cracked sunrise through the kitchen blinds. Eli babbling from his crib like he's announcing himself to the world. Murphy curled up at our feet, older now but still loyal. And Karen. She still looks at me like she can't believe I called her. Some days I still think about the what-ifs. What if I hadn't called? What if she hadn't handed me that note? What if I'd just taken the ticket and kept driving but I didn't? She didn't. And that's what makes all the difference. See, love doesn't always show up the way you expect. Sometimes it pulls you over. Sometimes it gives you a number instead of a fine. Sometimes it hands you a life when all you were looking for was a shortcut home. And if I've learned anything since then, it's this: don't wait too long to make the call. You never know when someone's just waiting for you to show up honestly, nervously, imperfectly, but ready. If you've ever had a moment that changed your whole life, even if it didn't feel like it at the time, drop it in the comments below. Was it a look-a conversation, a decision you almost didn't make? Let's talk about those little moments with big consequences. And if you believe in second chances, strange timing and love that shows up wearing a badge, hit that subscribe button. More stories like this are coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.